told you so. There is no Republican Party. You only have MAGA now. When I said that, conservatives literally pushed back, said I was out of my mind, that the Republican Party is diverse, ideas galore. Don Jr. has come out and said it. There is no Republican Party anymore. And there are receipts to back up his proclamation. Here it is.
Listen, I think the RNC is going to be a little bit more of that old school establishment. That Republican Party, frankly, no longer exists outside of the DC Beltway. But it takes a little while to make that transition. But again, I think the moves that happened today. I think that's the final blow. People have to understand that America first, the MAGA movement, is the new Republican Party. That is conservatism today. There may be the Mitt Romneys and the Liz Cheneys out there, but that is a rare and dying breed, and it doesn't really represent any demographic outside of the swamp in America anymore today.
I mean, he's making it plain for those who may have trouble catching up. There's more. The new leadership of the Republican National Committee, picked by former President Donald Trump, started firing dozens of employees days after taking over, according to 3 people familiar with the firings who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly and because they are scared. I added that second part. About 60 people were told they were no longer employed, according to a person with direct knowledge of the changes. One of the people familiar with the firings said data, political, and communications staffers were affected. And notifications were made on Monday by Chris LaCivita, a senior Trump advisor who was at the RNC's Capitol Hill headquarters. This individual, communications person now de facto, had complained about the staff of the RNC for multiple months. People who spoke to him said, and long planned to make changes. The Trump advisor has studied the organization's payroll and employees for several weeks. LaCivita also told some contractors that they would not be renewed, and some of the ousters included employees who worked in the campaign staff of state offices. Some staffers were described as shocked by the firings, which took place over the course of the day. Gutting a committee just before the election seems insane, end quote, said a former RNC employee. An email sent to some RNC employees from Chief Operating Officer Sharon Carn-Cross, a copy of which was reviewed by the Washington Post, said, quote, certain staff are being asked to resign and reapply. The email went on to say that those employees who did not reapply would have their last day with the RNC on March 31st. Ironically, that's more graceful than I assumed they will be. Now, let me explain the playbook here. Donald Trump announced a while ago that he wanted his own slate of executives at the RNC. This is the company of the Republican Party, all right? This is the corporation of the Republican Party. This is the barrier that would attempt to negotiate between the extreme Trump agenda and the more, let's just say, not as extreme overall Republican or conservative movement. That barrier, ladies and gentlemen, is no more. That barrier has now been eliminated. This is a very similar approach as Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler did not first take over the country. Adolf Hitler had to first take over the Nazi Party. When he took over the Nazi Party, he utilized the apparatus of the Nazi Party in order to then infiltrate and remain in power as a dictator over the entire country. This is part of the playbook. And also, remember the why. Why did Donald Trump truly want to control the Republican Party? Simple. He wanted the RNC to continue paying for his legal bills. That's the reason. Don't kid yourself. This is not about saving the country or redeeming the Republican Party. This is about a man who owes millions on top of millions, and he would prefer the RNC by way of contributions and corporate sponsorship to pay his legal bills. There's more. The RNC voted Friday to install the new leaders, which include Michael Whatley as chair and Lord Trump as co-chair. Lord Trump is the former president's daughter-in-law. La Savita, a top aide for Trump's 2024 campaign, took over as now the chief of staff, basically in charge of communications currently, communicating with everybody inside and outside of the party. In a speech Friday, Whatley said the RNC, quote, will work hand in glove with President Trump's campaign as he faces an expected rematch against President Biden. Now, let me say this. For the Republicans who allowed this to happen, understand your fate is your fault. You allowed a minority regime of the party to come in and snatch it away from you. Don't keep telling us about MAGA represents a minority of the Republican movement. You allowed individuals with loud voices and smaller numbers to overtake your years-long tradition. You deserve what you got. And now that Trump has his people in charge, do you think the RNC is going to organize for you, Republicans throughout the state? Of course not. Do you think the RNC is going to make decisions that would help the overall agenda of, let's say, the US Senate on the Republican side? Of course not. Do you think the RNC is going to be interested in truly helping Republicans win in states as governors, attorney generals? No, of course not. The agenda, the priority, and the emphasis will always be about Trump and his personal goals. Do you think the RNC will now be weaponized against certain Republicans that did not sign up for the Trump agenda? Yes, it will be unheard of, but it will happen. This is your reality now. There's more. The RNC is at a crossroads. This is a critical election year. According to a January campaign finance filing, it had a historically low $8.7 million of cash on hand, compared with $24 million at the Democratic National Committee. More broadly, Trump and his allies are racing to close a fundraising gap with Biden and his affiliated groups. Quote, we have to raise a lot of money, Lord Trump said Friday. Whatley, the North Carolina GOP chair, replaced Ronna McDaniel as RNC chair, a post she held since 2017. Trump had also helped install her in that job, but Trump soured on her after she offered to leave earlier this year. I'm going to make another connection here. Democrats could have a great opportunity to take advantage of the reality of disorganization. One of the staffers made a great point from the RNC. How do you change out your entire executive committee when we are this close to an election? Correct. It does seem to be quite adversarial to progress, and it will mean that there's a level of disorganization present. Democrats can take advantage of the cause and effect that this will have in the RNC, at least in the short term. But will they? Remember, the Donald Trump that we know praised Hitler, praised others who are currently dictators. The Donald Trump Hungarian strongman Viktor Orban is fantastic. Chinese leader Xi Jinping, brilliant. North Korea's Kim Jong-un, he's an okay guy. And then he said Adolf Hitler, quote, he did some good things. A worldview that would reverse decades-old US foreign policy in a second term should Trump win November's presidential election, multiple former senior advisors told CNN. This is where we are now. The Supreme Court days ago ruled that basically an insurrectionist can, in fact, be president of the United States, contrary to the writing of the Constitution and the essence or spirit of those who founded this nation. The Supreme Court did not set aside the findings of the Colorado court. They only set aside that the Colorado court had power to eliminate Donald Trump from the ballot, meaning him being named or found to be an insurrectionist by the Colorado court remains intact. The Supreme Court has set a precedent here, very dangerous, that in fact, yes, a president can be an insurrectionist. All right, Sharon, a lot to unpack, but it is here. There is no more Republican Party. What say you?
Scholars such as yourself warned us this day was coming. The only thing that I find shocking in what you've laid out is just how weak the Republican Party was to begin with, full of wimps and weak people, much like when the mob targets a company and takes it over and rapes it of its riches and then leaves it where not even the foundation can hold up the walls. This is where we're at. And anyone who, after Don Jr.'s proclamation about what the Republican Party is, who still calls himself a Republican today, we'll just have to lump them in with the rest. There's not two parties, there's just one.
That's right, there you go. So all of this nuance, and we're not like them, we're different Republicans, but you're supporting the leadership now. They have told you who they are. And if you support them, you are them, or you at least support their agenda. True.